So welcome, everyone. It is Tuesday, December 17th, 6:30 p.m., and this is the meeting of the Littleton Affordable Housing Trust. And so we do have a quorum this evening. We have Bartlett, Susan on Zoom, and then we also have Marianne and myself here in person in room 103, and we have lovely treats thanks to Marianne.
Pleasure.
So anyone looking for treats, come on down. We're not live, I know that. And so for this evening, we're going to go ahead and get started as we have Liz from Elder Human Services here with us to talk about an application. So Liz, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So I'm presenting a brand new LRAP this evening. This is LRAP 36. This family is a family size of 4. Their current rent is $1,935 with a household income of $67,600. They do have a total of 10 points and preference points. They have 3 for a 30 to 60% AMI, 2 for rental burden, 3 points for living, working, or going to school in Littleton. They have 2 points for 2 children in school and 0 points for seniors. So that does bring us to a total of 10 preference points. Through our conversation, we find that they are eligible. After rental, insurance, gas, electricity, and water, they're spending 50% of their income on housing expenses. They have applied to and are on the wait list for Section 8 HUD programs and low-income housing programs. So that is LRAP 36.
All right, thank you so much, Liz. Any questions from members? And welcome, Mark.
Sounds like an eligible candidate.
Yep, by all accounts, on paper and preference points, they are eligible.
Yeah. Is there any chance you think that they will regain some employment that would get them off of LRAP at some point?
Yes. The head of household has 2 part-time jobs looking for full-time employment, and the second head of household is receiving emergency benefits through the state, but also looking for full-time employment.
All right.
All right, any other questions or comments?
I'll make a motion to approve LRAP 36 as presented.
Great, thank you, Bartlett and Susan. All in favor? I'll start with Bartlett.
Bartlett, yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Marianne,
Yes.
and Mark,
Yes.
and Anne is a yes. So thank you, Liz, for being on tonight and presenting this application. And also thank you very much for all of the help that you and your team have provided for the upcoming mini grant program that is being established.
Oh, no, we're thrilled about that. Can't wait for it to roll out.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for being here this evening, and appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.
All right, so we started off with LRAP, which is item 2D on the agenda. So now we can kind of go back to where we were at the beginning. We have some action strategies to get to this evening, and Turkey Farmhouse is the first one. So Bartlett, I'm so glad that you're here this evening, and if you would like to go ahead and get started providing an overview of where we are.
Well, where we are is that we have gotten a report from the historical consultant that says that both the house and the barn appear to be early first half of 19th century or before, possibly 18th century for that part of the house. And I got an email today from Linda Stein of the Historical Commission saying that the Community Preservation Act has language in it that requires historical preservation for any real property that's purchased with community preservation money. And
Bartlett, if I may, I'm sorry if I can
Yeah.
just interrupt for a moment. I think Linda Stein is in the.
yeah, she said she was going to try to attend. So, I mean, she's
Yeah,
welcome to
let's
talk about.
promote her, so that way if she has
Okay.
any comments or
Yeah.
questions, she can raise her hand.
So,
Sorry to interrupt.
yeah, other than that, there hasn't been much progress. That was a big thing that we were waiting for. I think we need to, find out how that CPC rule will be interpreted in terms of, the house that we have, and also how the historical commission will interpret the report, which the report puts a much more emphasis on the shape and the structure of the building than it does on the finishes, which I think is a good thing because that would allow us to change windows and replace siding, and also to modernize the kitchen and possibly change that into an addition, or rebuild that part of the house.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of detailed work to be done, but we have some ground rules in place.
So can you back up? Did we actually buy this with CPC funds? Or did we just buy these? I mean, we only spent like $100 or something.
Right, it was-
Was it from CPC or was
Yeah.
it from the other funds that we had access to?
No, it was from CPC.
Better? Okay.
And Linda does have her hand raised.
So does that also restrict our ability to sell it?
So
We can
Go ahead.
sell it as long as there's a permanent historic preservation on it, but that the extent of the historic preservation has not been determined. So
Do you want me to comment?
yes, please.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I feel like I need to confirm with some expertise on this actual requirement that if any CPC money is used, that a historic preservation restriction would be required. I know it's true if historic funds are used, but from what I sent you today, it looks like if any CPC funds are used, the preservation restriction would be required. But I want to check with the Mass Historical Commission, probably Town Council, and a nonprofit group called the Community Preservation Coalition to make sure that that's true, that a preservation restriction is really required. I'm not 100% certain of that.
Right. I mean, from the way I read that sentence, it is required, but it's not clear what that preservation would cover. And I don't think it means.
We would decide with you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've done this for 12 Robinson Road now for the first time,
Okay.
so we know what we're doing now, and we didn't before. So we would work on that with you. We would decide what elements, our consultant thinks is the most historically significant. We understand that you need to do a lot of work on the house for, affordable housing. We know that's the whole point.
Right.
We wouldn't seek to, make this pristine historic preservation or restoration. We know it's a rehab. So,
Okay.
there would probably be some elements exterior and interior, but, you read Shanti's recommendations.
Yeah, I did.
There's a lot of flexibility in there.
Good. Thank you.
So to the point about how the house was purchased, if you recall a year ago when we were having these conversations, there was a question as to whether or not we should use CPC dollars or not. And it was seen as more advantageous to the trust to be able to use CPC dollars so that there could be any potential other funding as a result of it having been acquired with CPC dollars. So that was a decision we did make a year ago when it was acquired.
So if there are some restrictions on what's required because of the historical importance, and it becomes cost prohibitive or expensive, we could then decide to sell the property. That a
Correct.
possibility?
I mean, at this point, I would say that most possibilities are still to be determined. Yes, yeah. So with the
also-
information,
Sorry, just to a reminder that at our last historical commission meeting, we did vote that we would be willing to use a portion of our CPC historic funds for the rehab.
and thank you to you and your committee for that. So one of the things that we have with the Durkee project is this historic preservation aspect of it. And then we have sort of as a next step, as I understand from Linda, is a recommendation that we use a preservation architect to come in and help us understand, what would need to be done in order to rehab, and then also a structural engineer. And so those are costs that we need to determine whether or not we actually want to pay for that to happen. So in addition to that, Mark had filled out some applications, and I don't know if we've heard anything on those
I haven't heard
applications,
anything on any.
to two groups. And we wanted to make sure that we got in touch with them as well, probably at the beginning of the new year, just to see where they are in their application process, because those were applications for, they were rolling applications for technical assistance. So we have the historic preservation piece, and then we have the need for technical assistance to help us understand what it is that, again, we could do. Now, we do have some information that we got from Ted Doucette in terms of the potential for up to maybe 18 bedrooms. And so, Bartlett, I think you have a thought as to how that could potentially be done. Did you want to explain that a little bit more?
Yes, the house is limited to 3 bedrooms because of the septic system that it has. It's a separate project septically from the rest of the 5 acres. My thought, which is only a pipe dream, is to put 4 units in the barn, sort of with an entrance where the shed is now in the middle bay, and a 2-bedroom unit on the left and a 2-bedroom unit on the right, and then a stair in the central bay going up to the upper level, with basically the same 2-bedroom layout on each side, and then a 3rd bedroom up in the attic in the roof space. So we'd have a total of 8 bedrooms in that. Or is that with my calculation, 10 bedrooms in that building. And then that would leave some bedrooms left over. And I was thinking of that we'd do new construction of I don't know, say a 2-family house with 3 bedrooms each or something like that, on the space left over. And I'm thinking large units, for 2 reasons. One is that the large units are hard to come by. There are not many of them in town, and I think that having large units instead of a lot of small units would somewhat reduce the parking requirements. So that's my thought process there. There's another thought that I don't know if it's possible or not, but that would be to divide the house into 2 units. One is a 3-bedroom unit that's on the septic system, and another is a 2-bedroom unit or a 1-bedroom unit, because it's a big building and it's bigger than a 3-bedroom house. And then there would be a pump chamber and a force main for the sewage up to the treatment for the rest of the site. So that would, add 1 or 2 bedrooms to that system. Now, I don't know if you can do that. I don't know what the laws are regarding having 2 septic systems on 1 parcel of land. I don't know what there's some legal complications with that. So that's my thought process so far. My barn plan requires some serious structural work, in that the framing for the loft space in the main part of the barn is about 7 feet above the floor. I believe that there's room in there to just cut those beams and replace them, just put them a foot higher, and then take the top floor, which covers the entire area of the barn, and raise that about 2 feet to put it at the level of the where the roof meets the outside walls, where the eaves are, which would make a little bit more sense. There's tie rods in there now that hold it together. So I think that's structurally feasible. I think it's less complicated than what happened at Robinson Road, which the roof was taken off in one piece and put on the ground while the walls were rebuilt. But again, I would have to defer to people with some competence and experience in dealing with barns on how to do that.
And that's what we had talked about for next steps, right? To get the technical support,
Right.
either through grants or.
Right.
or-
And
Yeah.
Linda did send me 3 architects that are qualified to do this kind of work, and I think they are qualified, and I would be happy to talk to any or each of them and see if they would be interested in looking at this project.
So let's open it up to what folks think, because I know that, Mary Ann and Mark, you were at the walkthrough, when the historic architect was there. And, Susan, have you been to the turkey house, the farmhouse inside? No?
No,
I just wanted to, okay, I just wanted to confirm that most folks have at least been inside. And so based off of what you just heard Bartlett talk about in terms of ideas, I mean, what do you think about that?
So starting with the barn, I think that one's a little bit easier. I like the idea. I think it sounds feasible. I think it would definitely need an expert, right, to understand structurally if it's feasible, and even the square footage that's inside and what that configuration could look like. So an architect, as you said. For me, it's a little bit more difficult to envision a house renovation or rehabilitation. I mean, it's a lot of small rooms. It's a lot of deterioration of the just some of the basics. And I'm not an expert, but that's just my observation. Like that one, to me, seems like it could potentially be really expensive to renovate, even without the historical preservation or rehabilitation. Yeah.
So I'll second pretty much what Mary Ann said. I think the barn is a worthwhile project to pursue, potentially at this point for the Affordable Housing Trust. I don't think the house is a viable project. It's going to cost way too much for what you get out of it for affordable housing. I mean, if we think that the Tohono project is expensive, this will blow it out of the water on the cost per unit, the turkey renovation. I think the barn, we can do something at potentially a more reasonable cost per unit. I don't think the house you can.
Okay. Susan, would you like to opine on this?
no, since I haven't been inside, it would be hard to do it. The ideas that have been proposed sound great if they could be done. But I can understand from having looked at the pictures, I can understand the hesitancy on the house.
Well, I think for now, I'm going to be on the optimistic side. Having gone through a personal home renovation, not historic, but and living in a historic home, I recognize the labor and cost associated with that labor to really be able to get an antique home rehabilitated. And until we can determine what that cost is, I think I would like to remain optimistic on that. And that's part of why getting some technical assistance, I think, will be very helpful. And Bartlett, what do you think?
Well, I agree that the house is going to be an extraordinarily expensive venture. I think we do need more knowledge about that building. I think, you know, a little bit more detail from a consultant and also, so just, you know, just to refine some of the parameters of the house. But I think that I would really like to proceed with the barn as much as we can. I think that, you know, getting some housing there would be really great.
I agree with on the barn, but I'd also add in, and whatever else we can do for the other, you know, the 18 units, 18
Right.
bedrooms.
18-bit.
The
Right.
barn plus, you know, it's kind of like where 12 Robinson Road was rehabbing the house plus adding those condos in the back. We should do something similar with renovating the barn and adding condos in the back or whatever we want to call them, right? And then, and leaving the house is a separate thing because I just don't see how the house is financially viable for affordable housing.
And would it be possible then to divide the two? To renovate the barn, develop behind it additional units, and sell the house?
Well, we'd have to go to the planning board and get them to overrule their decision that the land can't be subdivided, which I think would be a formality, but
It is something we'd have to do, yeah. So I guess I would ask that we consider that question as to whether or not we move forward with the barn for, you know, till the beginning of the new year, till January, and we see if we can get some assistance on that. Again, the Massachusetts Historical Commission, I believe it is, Linda,
Mhm.
one of the historical commission at the state, I believe, is the one that provides funding for historic homes. And so that was one of the other reasons for being able to purchase it with CPC dollars. So there's a lot of questions around that, and I certainly understand the hesitancy of wanting to separate them so that we can move forward with one. So I appreciate that idea.
Is there a reason not to separate them even if we're moving forward with both of them? I mean, they're going to be separate no matter what. They're going to be on separate septic systems to begin with, right? The house is already a standalone entity. So
right.
even if we're moving forward on both, is there a reason to keep them together?
Because it's a different process, yes.
I'm looking to Maren right now for any reason why they should not be separated.
Let's see, you'd want to know where the septic system and reserve system were gonna be, and, you know, general building envelopes on the barn lot, so-called barn lot. But it is, like you said, in front of the planning board to update the decision issued for K Estates regarding the property, and then a simple A&R
Yeah.
to divide the lot.
Yeah. I do not remember seeing a reserve septic field on this plan of the septic system for the house. There must be one, but I don't remember seeing it.
And Ted would know all of that, so.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if that's the will of the members, and that's something we can pursue in the new year. I think for right now, as I said, we should give it time to see if we can get that technical assistance, but if it's not harmful to the overall project in any way to separate them, then we can pursue that. Any other comments on what we've been discussing? Because if not, I want to talk about another aspect that I think is really important for us to be able to move forward. And this requires everyone to feel a little comfortable in terms of identifying the uses of it. So did anybody have an opportunity to view the video of the link that I sent?
I've seen it.
Okay. Anyone else? So in the video link and then with the presentation, it really walks through what it takes for any organization to be able to create a development based off of town-owned property. And one of the first items that they recommend, they being the developers that have gone through this kind of process before, is that we, as a governing entity, need to decide a few things. One of them is, do we want to have ownership versus rental units at this particular site? Would it be mixed use? Probably not. What would the density be? What would the affordability levels be? Who would be our population that we would be aiming to serve? Preservation goals, which we've talked a little bit about. And then once we determine that, it makes it a lot easier to get that technical assistance, because as
Right.
a board, we've already identified what it is that we think we want to do. So we've now been bouncing this around for almost a year. And so I want to open it up to some of these questions for everybody to see if we're all on the same page or not. Right?
So is the plan that we develop it, or we put out an RFP for someone to buy it and turn it
We
into,
would do an RFP.
where we're selling the unit to a developer to build this, or we are?
So hold on a second, is it RFP or RFR?
Well, an RFQ first.
You can issue it how you like.
Okay.
But
It's a request for something.
you're looking to dispose of the property,
Mhm.
and you're looking for the right developer to develop it according to,
All
the
right,
board's wishes.
yes.
My takeaway from the video is that the more that we can do before we pull in a developer, the better, including getting whatever approvals we need from the town buy-in, town support. The kind of the eye opener to me is that if you don't have that, you might not get developers interested. You know, if it seems too loose, if we don't have some of those parameters spelled out.
Mhm.
And then also, if we don't define a lot of these things up front, and we get people to respond to the RFX, whatever it is,
Mhm.
it's gonna be comparing apples and oranges.
Right.
Right, it won't be a consistent proposal that we're looking at, it'll be all different because it was too loose, so that was their advice.
Yeah.
Right, that was,
Thank you.
those are my takeaways.
So in that, I think it is important that we start to define what we want based off of how we understand our town and how we understand the location and the site and what's there and what we would like to see. So ownership versus rental, I'm just going to start that part of the conversation.
It makes no difference to me on ownership versus rental on these. So we're going to basically end up, I mean, we're turning houses, the barn into townhouses and building other townhouses. So no matter what, there's a homeowners association type setup. So it's either a developer is the homeowners association, or everyone's contributing to a homeowners association. It's not going to be that different than Haggard as far as that goes, but just on a more affordable scale, right? It's going to be something, the project's going to end up being something similar to that, I believe, or am I misinterpreting? And we could decide whether it's ownership or rentals, it doesn't.
Mhm. Well, so to that point, based off of what we saw at Hager, the opportunity to be able to put these out as rentals, I believe is a little bit greater, and let me just explain. I think one of the things that if somebody is looking to acquire a unit, if you will, right? Are they going to want amenities? And the amenity that this particular location has is the train station, being across the street from the train station. Beyond that, I just don't see that there are going to be amenities that would be provided as a homeowner. Could be wrong. I mean, if anybody thinks otherwise.
I agree with that, but then when we went to the 550 discussion, all the seniors over there wanted to own something, not to rent something, so. And I'm not advocating for one or the other, I
Yeah.
don't really know what the right answer is.
I actually think that because we're wanting to, we haven't gotten to the affordability question yet, but if we want these to be affordable, folks who aren't able to meet the eligibility criteria are not going to be able to do it. And so from that standpoint, are we pushing something or putting something out on the table that perhaps, people aren't going to be able to afford, not because they don't have enough money, but because they have too much money. So my perspective would be that we look at these as being rental units. And we would not be, we the town are not managing them.
That was my question. Was this something that would be managed by Littleton Housing Authority, or would it be someone else to act as landlord?
So Bartlett being on the Littleton Housing Authority, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that if there are rental units there, that the housing authority would be willing to take over management of those units. The housing authority has some scattered units around town already, and they're not confined to one site. So I think that that's actually a real possibility.
Or who owns all the units managed by the housing authority are owned by whom? They're not owned by the town.
The state owns the buildings at Pine Tree Park, but there's 12 units that Lisa manages at Pondside, and there's some other privately owned houses that have units in them. And she works with those landlords with, there's vouchers and stuff that make the rents workable.
And what's the affordability quotient what's the threshold for affordable?
The pond side works on people paying, I believe, 30% of their income for housing. So if they have no income, they basically don't pay anything. So that's
what's the cap? What's the cap on their AMI?
I don't. I don't know. That's never come up in my years on the board. Most of these people are essentially homeless when they come in.
It's out on the website. I was looking at it earlier. So I want to say it's somewhere in the 30 to 60 range that it can't exceed. But folks that we've seen over there are mostly on like $1,200 a month that they get from Social Security, and they pay 30% of that, and the state pays the difference. Right. So Onsite still gets all of the rental income. It's just the
Right.
state.
Right, and the private landlords get a full whatever they charge for rent. The tenant pays some, and the voucher pays the rest. So, and there's mobile vouchers that attach to persons, and there's other vouchers that are attached to a place. So that sticks with that apartment. It's I don't understand how that works, but that's what Lisa deals with.
The video link that you sent,
Mhm.
they seem to be, leaning towards rental property, or at least promoting that more. They said there's somewhere between 4 and 10 times as much state funding for rental than there is for, ownership.
Okay.
That can come, so that seemed to be one consideration. The other interesting thing would be, I guess from Lisa and from the, Littleton Housing Authority, we hear about these wait lists, right, of people who are waiting to
Right.
get affordable housing.
Right.
What's that profile? You know, the folks that I see through St. Vincent de Paul, there's no way they could come up with a down payment or a mortgage. Like the
Right.
need that I see is more rental, right? And I don't know, but I only see a subset. So it'd be interesting to hear from Lisa what that waiting list looks like. And what the
Well,
profile is.
yeah, I asked what I mean a year ago, and well, October a year ago, I asked for a wait list, and the wait list is across the entire state because it's run by Housing and Livable Communities, but the list that I got was for people in the state who were willing to move to Littleton if they got an apartment. And that was the total of, elderly and families and handicapped was something over 12,000 people
The number on the wait list.
on the wait list. Yeah. So that's not people in Littleton, but it's people who stated that they would be willing to move to Littleton if they got an apartment. So yeah, there's a huge need for rental housing. I think, at the low, below 30%, nobody can afford a house. I think if we, say, okay, we're going to sell these units, to 80% AMI, then there would actually be a market. So, we have to decide also, what our target is. If we think about we're going to work with the housing authority, our target is, below 30%. I think that's the only realistic conclusion that we can come to.
Okay, well, let's keep that in mind. So with first question being ownership or rental, does anybody prefer to we say ownership?
So the other, I'm leaning towards ownership a little bit just because with the other projects in the works, I think we have more leaning towards rental there. And I don't know that we have anything with, the potential with the 550, the deeply affordable, that's going to be rental. We don't have any projects in the works that's affordable ownership.
Well, I understand. I think to Mary Ann's point in terms of what folks can afford, because it's gonna have to be
Well,
the individuals at that sweet spot, right? The ones that don't earn too much money, but who have just enough to be able to make a down payment, and
Right, so-
then they're gonna have homeowner fees.
So are we looking, yeah. So are we looking at the 30% people or the 60% people or the 80%? I think that's really the first question, and then you can go on to the second one. Right, because
Or we could,
you can't say we're gonna do 30% and ownership, right?
Yeah, that's right. And some of the examples that they gave on this video, it was mixed. I think that's the mixed use, right? It's 3 units at 30%, 6 units at 60%, and some that were not subsidized or not affordable housing. So I think there are different profiles you can look at.
And that's the model that I'm used to seeing, but that's just happens to be my limited experience. We have to have enough funds for the developer to be able to complete the project. And I think we could learn a lot from other examples in other communities of what has worked. How would we get a rental development to come to fruition and work. I can see how we would get a for sale development to come to fruition, because you can imagine that the market rate units would offset the subsidized units to a certain extent. But without the sales price, without the sales funds coming in, how is that rental development, how is that financed? And that's a big learning opportunity.
Well, I also think that if we went to, let's just say there's 6 3-bedroom units here, right? We have 18 bedrooms where you can play with. You can say that there's 2 that are at market price, and the other 4 units are at affordable prices, and we're subsidizing the development cost, right? So that's the other way to do it, right? Like, we're subsidizing habitat, right? We can say we're buying into these affordable units effectively.
Is there any sort of a ratio that you know of? No. It goes back to my one question.
So I would just, we would need clarification on what we can do with CPC money when we're buying into these projects, just for making sure that we're.
In support of affordable housing, correct?
Yeah.
How that's defined.
So I think this sounds like what I hear folks saying is, if we can have the most number of affordable units, but then offset that by having market rate units. So in other words, what does that ratio or combination look like, so that we can get as many affordable units that we can, quote, afford to have or to participate in? And then if there need to be market rate units to offset that, but we don't know what that ratio is, right?
Right.
But is that what everybody's saying?
I think so.
Okay.
Right, and it'll depend on the site and the development cost of
Right.
that particular site and the number of units that you can get.
And there's obviously a threshold if we're doing for sale units where you can't say, 30% AMI, but if we said, it's, let's just say it's 40% or 50%, whatever the number is, then we just have to figure out what the cost, how much we have to contribute to the developer. How much does it cost to buy a 60% AMI unit versus a 40% AMI unit, right? What do we have to contribute to make these things work for the developer, right?
Yeah, make it interesting, right, for the developer to take the business.
And I do think, to make this further, Bartlett continues to pursue with an architect, some sort of plan for, how many units we can put in the barn. And, we can do a cost swag on what that would be, and say, we have plans for where the septic can go, and you can put, 2 more units out back, or however many more units, right? And we can come up with a plan of, a potential high-level architecture plan for this before we go to whatever RFX we're going to submit.
Right.
And also say how much we're willing to contribute, right? Where we're,
So that goes back to our question about affordability. Are we talking about 80%, 60%, 30%? Because we've just said that we would like to be able to have as many affordable as possible. Do we want to be able to go to that lowest 30% AMI?
But what I heard was that if they're for sale units, that's not likely, but if they, somehow the whole entire development is
Rental.
rental.
If we can afford it, yes, right, because we're gonna have to subsidize,
So-
to make it interesting for those 30%, right? So if we can afford it, I think, sure, we should have all levels, but
So as many
there's
30
a
and,
math equation there.
as many 30 and 60% affordable as possible
For
My opinion.
for rental, yeah.
I would be inclined to go with all 80%. Just because that's closer to feasible. I mean, I don't know where, I mean, these things are going to cost, $500,000-$600,000 to do. And, to, we just need some income in there to make that work.
Anybody?
I'm leaning more towards the 60 to 80 myself too, because I just don't know
Okay.
that. I think our contributions get too high to make it the 30 to 60. It's just,
I think it's a math equation, right? And it's how much we can afford.
So as many as 60 and 80% AMI as possible. All right. I agree with that. So. Susan, any comments, questions?
No, I would agree with the 60 and 80% because look at Hager. They had a hard time with that one final unit. I
The
don't even know.
60% unit.
Yeah, it was a 60% unit, and for a sale, and they had a developer do it. It's not us, but those people living there are subsidizing really because their prices went
Right.
up,
Right.
and we would be subsidizing it. And like Bartlett said, those units are not inexpensive, and the 60% was a great price, but to find someone who could qualify was difficult. I don't know if they finally filled that one or not. But
I would also say that if the state's willing to contribute from the housing authority side to make 30% units, then I'm more interested in the 30% units.
well, yeah, if somebody else helps us, sure.
Okay, so mixed use density. So Bartlett, when you were talking earlier, can you repeat the numbers that you said you thought would be in the number, number of bedrooms in the house, bedrooms in the barn, and bedrooms outside?
Okay, we're starting with 3 bedrooms in the house.
Okay,
I'm proposing with my 4 units to put 10 bedrooms in the barn.
and in the barn.
So that's
okay.
10. And then that would leave 8 bedrooms left if we don't do anything else with the house. So that would be, 2 threes and a 2, or, 4 twos, or, something would be another townhouse kind of construction near the barn, near the street.
So are you saying 10 in the barn, 3 in the house, and 5 elsewhere? Is that what you're saying? No?
No, the 3 in the house is a separate calculation. So there's 18 that we can play with. So 10 in the barn, and then 8 left over.
Oh, okay, so
So-
I'm
so-
only questioning it because when we were talking with Linda, I thought you had said the 3 in the house were part of the 8.
Well, I was suggesting that in theory, it would be possible to split the house and make it into 2 units and have 1 unit on the septic system that's there, and the other unit connected to the new septic system that serves the barn.
Okay,
But that involves some, complicated plumbing.
okay.
And I don't know what the legal questions are about doing that, but that was a, sort of a harebrained proposal, but it would make a better use of the house. Put 2 units in it instead of 1.
Well, you look like you're really thinking hard. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I was going back in the conversation a little ways. What we had heard, last spring from, what I had heard from last spring from a nonprofit developer was they're looking for, on rental development projects, they're looking for at least 40 units to make it a project that they can actually take on.
Right.
I think
Well, and we heard the same thing when we talked with the select board member from
that way.
Medway. And so this project isn't gonna get that. So that's one of the reasons why whatever RF we put out there, it's gonna have to be to entities that perhaps already deal in smaller projects or deal in very specific low-income affordable units.
Or we get the select board to combine the Shattuck Street building with our project. That way we could get to 40 units.
I think it works that way. Or does it?
Good
All
question.
right, so, yes, Susan.
No, I was just saying, good question, Bartlett.
Thanks.
So our next question then is population served. As we think about all of this, and we've been talking about it, who do you envision living there? Because being close to the train station, it can meet a multitude of needs, whether it's families, young people, seniors, the shuttle from the train station to the common. Anyone can go as to what you,
I'm leaning towards families. We've already talked, I mean, as part of the 550, it was targeted at seniors. There's nothing targeted at families now, so. And if it's targeted at families, there's nothing to prevent seniors. If we're building 3-bedroom units, that's more necessarily targeted at seniors either. If we're gonna target it more at seniors, I think we should be probably building smaller units. More of them, but we have 18 bedrooms to play with, so, you know, we can do nine units, 2 bedrooms on down to, you know, 6, if we're doing 3-bedroom units, so.
Mary Ann, do you?
Yeah, I agree. I would lean towards family as well. You know, again, it would be interesting to see where the demand is, you know, for these, but it sounds like if there are 12,000, then there's probably, you know, across the board demand for the units. So, but I would also lean towards family.
Susan?
I'd say family too. Well, I'd say family too, but and that young family, the workforce kind of people.
Thank you. Bartlett?
Yeah, I'm very much leaning towards families.
Bartlett's been painting that picture, so I think we're all on board for that. All right, so preservation goals. I think if I heard the conversation correctly earlier, we're still trying to understand what those preservation restrictions would look like.
Right.
Okay. All right, and then, I'm sorry, Marianne, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna ask, where did we land on the ownership versus rental? Or did we?
I think I only heard Mark saying that he was focused on ownership.
I'm not opposed to rental, I just don't know. I mean, we just have other rentals, more rentals going in than ownerships in this class now, so.
I think that, you know, rental versus ownership may be a question that we can refer to MHP or to, you know, the Metro West, or, you know, people who know more about the big picture. I don't really have an opinion right now one way or the other. But I think that, you know, maybe if, I don't know, somebody out there probably does have an opinion.
I kind of, well, second what Bartlett said, my big opinion is that just the town doesn't own or manage it. Beyond that.
Right. Right. And in terms of management, having one owner, you know, makes it easier to monitor and control, you know, alterations to the historical fabric and general maintenance questions and stuff like that. But There should be a homeowners association that would deal with that too.
Philosophically, I think homeownership is a great path. I think that's what truly gets people out of poverty, right? Is being able to own their own home. It's just
Yeah.
the practicality of it, you know, will it be affordable for people who need it? Yeah.
Now, these units will remain affordable in perpetuity, supposedly, so they don't, they don't, when they sell, they don't get much of the equity that's been built up because they have to sell it at the same percentage affordable that they bought it at.
So they won't have appreciation, but ideally.
They get
they'll-
some appreciation, but not a whole lot.
But the equity even, just, not.
Yeah.
With rent, so that you don't get with rent.
So in the flyer that Metro West put together for Littleton, what is affordable housing in Littleton? They provided an example in here about rent and then examples of sales prices. Sales prices for a one-bedroom being $253,000, two-bedroom $272,000, three bedrooms $335,000. Of course, there's a bunch of caveats for that. So those would be the kind of home prices we're talking about.
Well, there's a pretty big gap between those numbers and the $600,000, $700,000 construction cost.
That's why I probably won't toward rent.
But I mean, we could say, okay, the AHD will contribute, $200,000 a unit. Because we did that with it. I mean, we're actually putting 300,000 into the Habitat 2 units, which is 150 per unit. So we could come up with that number and say, we'll contribute that to the developer and see how much that gets us.
Can't wait till we get to that point. All right, so, does anyone have any other comments? If not, I think I'll just quickly summarize what we talked about. Anything else?
I will just reemphasize that I think to actually make progress on this, we need to break up the house from the barn. That as long as the two are together, we're not gonna make any progress because the per unit cost on the house is I'm gonna guess, well, we heard actually when Bartlett and I did the tour, the guy said, 600,000 was an easy starting figure for it, right? And that's an awfully big nut for a 3-bedroom house for the affordable housing unit, a trust to take on. And I think as long as the house is in there, the rest of the project is going to stagnate, trying to figure out how we're bringing along the house. That's I'm not saying we should give up on doing something with the house, whether it's selling it or doing something else, but I think as long as the two are tracking together, the barn project's never gonna happen.
I support separating.
So, and we had talked about that earlier, and Maren, you had said that there were certain things that you still need to even look into before we could move forward on that. So what kind of support would we need to take that to the planning board? Do you need some more research time to figure out the separation? Because my biggest concern is I don't want us to go down the road and then in 6 months, when we've got some technical assistance going, they say, oh, it would have really been great if you had kept them together. That's my only kind of hesitation.
Well, you have to have the engineering work far enough along to understand exactly where you want the lot line.
Okay.
So process wise, it's not that difficult application to the planning board. For the two right over, like we discussed, but in order for the trust to tell the surveyor and the engineer how to divide the property, you have to know enough about the engineering to know where you want the lot line.
So what if we do this? What if we, wait and contact MHP and Mass Housing, see where they are on the applications? And then if it looks like it's not going to happen, then for sure we move forward to divide or try to figure out any other entity that could provide the technical assistance. And then if everybody still feels strongly, then we could take this to the planning board in February or March, as early as that.
Are there different setback requirements if it's a multifamily than a single family?
No. The, process to develop multifamily is unclear at this point, whether you're looking for a special, well, there's several different ways you could do it. Either zoning board of appeals for use variance or, a friendly, quote, friendly 40B project, which is probably a good way of doing it. That goes to, a good question where that goes to. Good question for town council, whether that would be a select board decision or a zoning board of appeals decision. That's not clear to me. But those would probably be the two best.
Is it that different than the 12 Robinson Road process?
12 Robinson Road is in the Village Common District, allowed by right.
We can't make these as ADUs, a lot of ADUs on a barn.
And then the other process could be a special permit under the senior residential development bylaw if the planning board would be willing to not require the age restriction. They have the ability to do it without an age restriction.
So you can see that a lot of it is really dependent on what it is that we want and what we find.
Yeah. I will add that putting 4 units in the barn will raise construction costs a little bit, because that 4 units in Massachusetts law is a multifamily house, and it requires sprinklers and an alarm system that goes to the fire department, which is, requirements that are not included in single family houses or 2-family houses. So there's a little bit of an added expense.
Henry said that was 3 or more
3 or more.
units. Yeah.
3 or more, yeah. So
I should say to all the members, so Bartlett and I did meet with Linda Stein and Henry, who is the building commissioner here in Littleton, just to pick his brain, because he has been a participant in Westford and Needham in the development of projects related to antique buildings. So it was helpful to hear his comments. As Bartlett said, that was one of them. That there's added costs because you have to sprinkler anything with 3 or more units.
So Bartlett, is there a reason to do 3 units in the barn rather than 2 units in the barn and the other units outside? Oh,
not really, because you also get with multifamily, you get economies of scale, and I don't think that the difference in cost is really going to make a much difference.
And then 2 other quick things that I remember from Henry's the conversation with Henry, and that is, around parking, that typically we would be looking at least 18 parking spaces, and then we could ask for a waiver for less parking. So that's something that we would have to consider as well as part of this overall plan, is so where's the parking going to be? And then the other is that if 50% or more of the house is taken apart, then the whole house needs to be done in new code. So that's, again, another added expense. So thank you for mentioning that, Bartlett.
so I'm a little, I know we said we want 18 units or 18
Bedrooms.
right? How much do we want to dictate how those, when we go to the RFX process, that there's 10 bedrooms in the barn versus 4 bedrooms or 8 bedrooms or, right? And allow external, like, control construction costs differently, right? I mean, maybe they put 2 4-bedroom units or 2 3-bedroom units in the barn, and it turns out those are the expensive units because they can do 20-foot ceilings, right? And then they do townhouses outside or duplexes, right? And that can save construction costs. I don't know, what I'm asking is, we can develop this plan, but are we trying to develop the plan that we want or that's buildable or?
So my perspective is that we say what we answer these questions and that we are looking at creating something that has 18 bedrooms in the barn, the outside land, and 3 bedrooms inside the house. And how they configure that is really going to be up to them because they have to make it work for their business model.
So if we're doing that, then how much of Bartlett's time or energy should be talking to an architect about what can be done in the barn?
Well, I think again, to Mary Ann's point about us having as much background as we can to be able to put into the RFR. So if Bartlett is off using his time to be able to determine, this is what could potentially be done in the barn, then that gives us more information to be able to put into the RFX. Because it's food for thought for them to be able to use.
Yeah, I have not put a significant amount of time into this. I mean, I've on the overall project, but I've probably put less than an hour into thinking about, putting units into the barn.
The questions asked at the end of that video that you sent was, from the audience, do you have a template? Like, what does the perfect RFX look like? Because they were saying what you should put in, what you shouldn't. And they don't have specific templates, but they said and this is MHP, they said they have examples, that we can look at. And it might be interesting to get our hands on a few of those examples. And even get the developer's view on which ones are, more appealing and make their job easier, right? With the level of specificity we're talking about. I tend to agree. I think probably, at least for this first phase, the more latitude we give them, the better in terms of just understanding the possibilities of the barn. But on the flip side, we don't want to give them just a complete blank slate, right? Because then we'll get all kinds of different proposals back.
So that's what we did with this building 2 years ago. We put out an RFI to say, we have this building, what could you turn it into? And we got 3 proposals back, basically, right? I think 3, right? And we could basically say, we have this property that we want to put affordable units on, right? With this barn that we'd like to turn into affordable, something, right? What could you do with it, right? And we can put out something like that and, maybe Metro West or other, they responded on this unit, but it was a lot bigger. So we might be able to get something, I don't know.
Right. To your point about MHP being the group that made that comment about the templates, they are one of the organizations that we sent the application to. When Mark
Okay.
sent the application for the technical assistance, so that would be great.
Yeah.
If they respond affirmatively, yeah. So, okay. So let me see if I can recap. We are all open to the idea of separating the house from the rest of the parcel. We know that will then require a process to go through the planning board to make that happen. We talked a little bit about making sure that we want to understand what that separation means. In other words, what are the implications of us doing it so that we understand, is there going to be a problem down the road, or is it beneficial to us to actually keep them together, even if it's painful? We just want to understand that part of the process, right?
Yep.
Then in terms of the questions that
Whose action item is that?
the action item of
Understanding the implications implications of keeping it together or splitting? How are we?
I was
coming up
looking
with
at
that?
Lauren for that, in terms of helping us to understand. Just as the liaison,
I'm fine as long as it's not me, so.
well, as town planner, I mean,
I just, if we're going to make these, statements that we have to have something done, we should have someone assigned to them as well.
Lauren, can we add that to your plate?
As long as there's enough engineering information on what's being done on the open parcel.
Right.
That we're not impinging.
Right, because what I heard you say is we need to then decide where's that line in the sand,
Mhm.
right?
So in order for Maureen to do that, then there's something on Bartlett's plate
Yes,
to give Maureen enough information to do that. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, whatever sketches we have from,
Ted?
All right, you know where I live.
Canada, I hear.
okay, thanks, Mark. So then on the questions, it sounds like we're leaning to rental unless,
I mean, I think maybe we should come up with like an RFI we submit in February timeframe to say, when we know a little bit more about how we can separate the process and throw it out there as like we're open to rental or ownership and see if we get any responses. But
and then in terms of the use, 3 in the house, 10 in the barn, 8 outside of the barn and house. Affordability levels is 60, as many 60 and 80% affordables as possible, market rate for the rest. So we're leaving that number flexible based off of the economics in order to make this work. The population served is families. Preservation goals are still to be determined because we need more information from a preservation architect. And yeah, we are waiting for the technical assistance.
I think the preservation goals also have to be split between the house and the barn too. We need separate information on the two of them.
I don't think we've talked about the barn from a preservation perspective as much as the house though. Right, Bartlett?
No, we haven't. I was really surprised to have Shanti say that she thought the barn was first half of 19th century, but there's nothing there except the shape and the structure. I mean, it's basically just a big empty box. So I think, poking holes in the walls for windows and, throwing a dormer up on the roof, and leaving the basic shape of the building is going to be fine. I think, we're keeping the shape of the building. It's still going to look like a barn. And I think that's fine.
I agree with all of that. I just think it needs to be clearly, the expectations need to be set and met, on both sides, right?
Well, we're going to start with the fact that there's a historic preservation on both buildings. And we need to define that a little bit better. But I think, if we say that that both buildings have historic interest or value and they need to be preserved to some extent, that we can spell that out, that the barn has to stay looking like a barn.
And those were in line with her recommendations, right? Exterior
Yeah.
finishes should remain historic in appearance, existing wood shingles and trim should be replaced in kind. But I think your point is just keep it separate.
Yeah, keep
So-
it separate and document it so that we can properly.
So I really want to point out that on MACRIS, the Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System, it's only the house that's listed on there. The barn is.
Right. The barn is not listed.
So I see it as the house or the barn is a non-issue from a historic perspective.
But we still have a preservation goal in that we want the barn to be turned into housing. We don't want the barn to be leveled and a house put up.
Yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so you're saying save the barn
Whatever
But it's
our
not from a
requirements,
preservation perspective.
whatever our requirements are for the
Yes.
barn have to be spelled out. And
Yes.
whatever the requirements are for the house have to be spelled out.
Yes, but one of them is in fact considered historic, the other one, not so much. Okay, all right, just want to make sure. Anything else on this particular subject, Mr. Harvey?
I don't think so.
So I appreciate your assistance to keep moving it forward with Maren, and we'll meet again on this. And Mark, thank you so much for reaching out to MHP and Mass Housing. And Marianne, thank you for watching the video.
Sure. It was interesting.
Yeah, it's been at least 6 months since I saw it, so,
Yeah, there's a lot there and very relevant. I think
Yeah.
it's worthwhile. It's an hour.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to the next item on our agenda then. Tehadawon Road, Mark?
So I pinged town, we, at our last meeting, I think we made some changes to the grant agreement and the contract with Habitat. Those have been sent back to town council and off to Habitat as far as I'm aware. Habitat has them. I pinged town council last week. They have not heard any comments from Habitat on this. They were going to reach out and let us know, and I have not heard back from them if Habitat had any concerns with the agreement. So
Okay,
after the holidays, I will ping again.
okay.
Let's just print it and sign it and get it over with.
Yeah.
You want to go tell them that? All right, thank you, Mark. Strategy 4.1, the homeowner mini grant program.
So I'll take this one too. So we met in last month, I guess, and went over a draft, several letters, like a flyer, the agreement. After that, a week or so ago, new drafts were circulated, a flow chart was circulated on how the process will work. We're meeting early next month to finalize all the documents. So that at our January meeting, we should be ready to vote on everything and ready to hit the ground. Hopefully, very quickly, because we don't have as much time to spend the money as we thought. The goal is to start, one of the documents we're working on was a flyer for contractors and try and like not pre-vet, but get contractors on board saying, and upfront, so they knew what the process was and would be willing to accept the payment terms, since it's slightly different than, contractors are requiring 25% down and 25% on this and that, everything's paid in arrears. So I think we made really good progress on the documents and pretty close. There's still some questions in my mind about, projects that come in above our threshold, how exactly we're going to manage them. If there's contingencies in projects, how that's going to be managed. And, there's stuff around the edges that are going to come up, I think. But I think generally we're in pretty good shape.
Agreed. I think we're really close to where we need to be. A few minor points to iron out. I think the timeline is important to know, since we need to spend the money sooner than we thought. So I think getting it finalized in January is a good target.
And like I said, I think we're gonna be needing to potentially pivot on some of these things once we approve them, like, someone gets a contract to put in grab bars in their shower and it's $2,000, and then they get in and all of a sudden find out that there's no drywall there and it's a $7,000 project. What are we gonna do? Right, so, we're gonna have to be ready to figure out what some of these answers are on how projects like that work, or
Or if we get 6 months in and we don't have people applying for them, that we made the criteria too strict and there aren't enough people that need them, so we might have to fine tune that also.
Is there any way to be able to, we don't have the time, and I get that, to sort of test pilot it, but is there any project that perhaps EHS knows about or any of us know about where there's a senior who would like to perhaps use this, and we can really get that process going from day one and learn from that process as quickly as possible, so that becomes sort of like the template, if you will.
I think we're going to be learning about these on each process as they come along, and hopefully we can find some easy ones to start with so we can figure out all of our.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right?
But yeah,
If there's somebody that we already know about that would perhaps use these dollars.
yeah,
I think it's probably a good question for Amy. You know,
Yeah.
maybe some of her clients might have an idea. I think also, as we talked about last time, talking to some of these contractors, they might have had people come to them, seniors in town who couldn't afford something, right? When they gave a quote, so maybe they might have some ideas of people that would be good candidates.
Mhm.
So I would see those as two good channels.
And our former colleague, Kim Albertelli, might know seniors
Yeah.
as well. Would somebody from the working team, Bartlett, Marianne, or Mark like to reach out to Kim and just ask
yeah, I
that
can do
question?
that.
Great, thank you.
Mark, what did you mean we have less time than we thought?
You gonna,
Well, in reading some of the information on HLC's website, it looked like some of the programs, grants were 2.5 years. We are getting 1.5 years to spend the 120,000.
Oh, okay.
And this is all predicated on getting contracted with the state as soon as.
Right. So I was just worried that, the state comes through, in February with the money and we have until the end of the fiscal year, the end of June to spend it all, which is, entirely possible.
June of 2026.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That gives-
Goals for the first year and the remainder for the second.
That we can do that.
what's the status on the contract now? Is it,
Next thing I do is attend training, early January, and then we wait for the state to put the contract together and send it.
so we don't have a definitive date for that yet?
No. My experience was with the MassWorks grants, they usually come out in January.
So should we, if we had all the documents ready to go and advertise this program February 1st, is that too soon
Well,
from your
let's see how the
perspective?
next several weeks go.
I mean, because we can start the process on our side before we necessarily have the funds locked up, potentially, right? Because we know they're coming, it just means the project can't be completed until the funds.
Yeah,
Well, right, we can't sign a agreement with any homeowners and contractors.
Right. Right, but we can start vetting them and we can start lining them up and say, as soon as the ink is dry on the contract, we're ready to go.
Mhm. Right, I believe we did get contacted, well, you saw the same email, we did get contacted from the state asking for kind of a pre-registration process with them. We went through that, and now the next is the training early January. I'm hoping at that point that we'll know more about what the next few weeks after that will bring.
Okay.
So given the fast track nature of this, promoting it is going to be really critical. I'm sure that you all have talked about how to do that, but does that also include having perhaps a LCTV segment done so that folks know what to
So
expect?
their LCTV is starting podcasts now, so you can go and do a podcast with them, to promote this. I mentioned it at the select board meeting last night. I will mention it the one in January as well. I mean, we can get it on, they have the senior corner or whatever, on LCTV. We can, yeah. We should come up with a promotion plan on who can do what. And can kind of stipulate that.
Yeah, I believe that EHS understands that they have a few clients that will be ready to go soon.
That'll be great. Yeah, those would be the ones to kind of learn from quickly. Yeah, because, being able to go through, EHS, COA, get in front of their board, and they can also help to get the word.
I also think it's a multi-week process just before it even comes to us, right?
Mhm.
They have to be vetted for financial need, by EHS. They have to, have two contractor estimates, right? That are, licensed so there's work,
Yeah.
there's a couple weeks of work on a homeowner.
Mhm.
So if we had all the documents ready to go on February 1st, we would be looking at applications in February, we'd be looking at them in March, I think. At best, right? So there's a lot of work on the back end, so. And I think it'll run more or less like the LRAP program from perspective of this board, where everything is vetted and signed off on before it comes to us, right? We know it's an eligible project.
Mhm.
We know they have contractors and reliable estimates and.
Mhm.
Well, something we might want to consider then, especially if timing is so critical, maybe we might have to have an interim meeting just to be able to approve whatever applications are there, right?
Yeah,
We don't
yeah.
want to be the holdup.
If Liz is finding that she has a lot of
Mhm.
applications that are waiting on us, we should
Yeah,
figure out a way of.
so if that comes around, just say yes, the Affordable Housing Trust would be willing to meet to make things
Mhm.
run smoother, quicker.
On the back end, Warren, if we have to figure out, like, do we have to have the funds allocated by June 30th or the checks sent out by June 30th of 2026? Because, at a certain point, we have to
Mhm.
turn off this program too. And it might be like March where we have to turn it off of next year.
Well, in my
You get
experience, you have to have the funds allocated, you have to have the checks drafted before, June 31st, at the very end of the
Oh,
program.
we don't have to actually mail out the checks by then.
Right,
So as long as the project has been approved, we can cut the check and not mail the check. Okay,
That's good.
so,
So on the internal side, maybe talking with, what is it? Is it Michelle in the accounting?
they're well versed in, both reimbursable and both grants, well, reimbursable.
Well, just letting her know that there might be a little bit of a push in June to make sure that this
well, we have a year,
Right.
year from this June.
Yeah, a year from this June, yeah.
year. Okay. All right. Well, so glad to see that it's all coming along.
And Sue, I assume this is being put in the broadcaster and things like that?
Yes, it hasn't gone in the broadcaster yet, I don't think. I think Liz was waiting to get the document so she could say, when you call, we can give you information. Yeah. I've mentioned it, at least briefly, outlined it, at the last two COA board meetings when I give an update from Affordable Housing Trust. So, it's how many people watch us? I don't know, but the COA board meetings, I mean.
So one thing we probably should then decide is when do we want it in the broadcaster, or when do we want it in the town newsletter? Do we want it in the January one or the February one?
Well, I think in my discussion with Jim, I think he had originally mentioned that he wanted to make sure everything was real, really, all signed off. Is that still sort of
That's my thought process on it as well.
and we can't really put stuff out there publicly until we've got the dotted line signed.
Which dotted line is, there's multiple, I mean,
This-
when do we have the actual,
Contract
we have the
with the state.
commitment from the state, we just don't know when the funds are available from the state, so I don't know.
Right.
Well, as select board
So-
chair, you should.
So maybe we'll target having
Informal.
things in the February newsletter pending what we find out at our next meeting.
Okay,
Like you said, Mark, too, that the homeowner has some work to do beforehand. So if we can have the documents ready and people know that they could apply and start their getting the contractors and that kind of thing, we could advertise that piece of it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I will need at least until our next meeting, right, to finalize the documents, because we're reviewing them.
Yeah.
The second week of January, and then at the next meeting, we'll sign off on them. So then after that, right, so the application should be final before we really publicize it.
so I think
Right.
getting in the February broadcaster and the
Yeah.
February newsletters should be our goal.
In February. All right, we went through item D. So now we can go on to board business. Any updates from folks that we have not already discussed? So Bartlett?
No, I think I've said everything.
Sue, how about you?
Nothing, thank you.
All right. And Mary Ann?
Nothing more to add, thanks.
Okay, Mark?
Good.
Okay. So,
Oh, no, you talked about, level 9, I'm trying to set up something so we can go and talk to them.
oh,
Nine.
lab
Lab
9. Lab
Lab
9,
9.
yeah,
So that's in the works.
great. And Mary Ann, do you have any contacts at Lab 9 through your?
So, yeah, I got some
Okay.
feedback from my brother on that. His company is actually managing their very first project in the US, or at least in Massachusetts. And he has some guidance there on how it's been working. But actually, maybe once you have the contacts and set it up, I'll more formalize it, at least heard from him today. So I do have some information and potentially another contact if we needed to get a tour.
Okay, that sounds great. Because I know that Jim would be interested in that as well, town administrator.
Great.
Let's see. Oh, okay, I have just a couple quick things. One is the First Church Unitarian is gifting some dollars to the Affordable Housing Trust. Lauren, do you want to explain a little bit more?
Yes, I opened the mail Friday several weeks ago, and here was a check from the church made out to the Affordable Housing Trust. And the process is for the trust to accept the gift. I'm not going to remember the exact amount, so I've got that folder sitting in my office. $472, I believe. And the process is for the trust to accept the gift and ask for the funds to be deposited to a non-CPC account, non-CPA account, to the trust non-CPA account. And then the gift form will go up to the town administrator's office.
We have some dollars in the trust that have been donated from other organizations before. So this will go in that particular pot. So as Lauren said, the amount is $484.68.
So I would recommend a vote to accept that amount and ask for it to be deposited to a non-CPA, the trust non-CPA account.
So moved.
First Church has donated to the Affordable Housing Trust before, a couple years ago, and I'm glad that they did it again, and I will make a motion that the board accept that gift.
Second.
Seconded.
And just to add to that, and then it'd be deposited into the non-CPC line item. Okay.
Right.
All right. So I have a first and second. And Mary Ann,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Sue,
Yes,
and Ann is a yes. So unanimously accept that wonderful gift from First Church Unitarian. Thank you, thank you. And I have a letter going out with signature thanking them for the gift, right?
Madam Bartlett, if you're not available in town, okay if I sign on your behalf?
Yes, thank you.
The second item is we have an opportunity based off of Chair Rambacher inviting all boards to come and meet in front of the select board. And so wanted to ask folks if that's something that you would like to do, to attend and provide an update to the select board. Typically, like right now is budget season and we don't have any dollars to ask for. So just providing an update is what I would recommend that we do. What are your thoughts?
I think we should ask for money.
Ask away.
Somehow I thought you would say that.
So what would be interesting for the select board to hear? And I think one is the small grant program. I think you said you already mentioned that, but I think that's a good one. I don't know how much we have to share on the Durkee property or habitat. I mean, those would be, I guess, a couple interesting updates. What do you think based on the recipients of this information? Is it valuable?
I think the grant thing is great to have someone come and announce it. And the other is like useful information.
Yeah.
So we talked about this for years, my time on the select board is like, we should have all the different committees come in at, once a year and give us an update,
Mhm.
right? But it's really hard to follow through on that because there's so many committees and you're gonna try and schedule this. So I turned it around this year and I basically invited all the committees, says, if you have something you want to share, right, come and talk, it's free airtime.
Yeah.
On a larger audience and typically watch this meeting. So it's a way of all the organizations to come and tell the select board and the residents what's going on. So I think it's a really useful thing to promote the small grant program and also to update on, the other projects that are in the works. So. You have 10 minutes.
10 minutes, you got it.
Ask for 11.
So given where we are with the small rent program and the select board agenda, would we be looking at the February meeting?
That's probably would be my recommendation is going to the first February meeting.
Okay, all right, great. So I would invite everyone to join that evening, whatever we wind up scheduling, and I'll work that out through the town administrator's office.
The meeting's in February on the 10th or the 24th.
Okay. Thank you. So then, in terms of information to provide to select board members at that particular meeting, Maren provided everybody, and it's posted on the town website, the affordable flyer that was created by Metro West. So Maren, what was the impetus for that flyer getting created?
That was a request that I had made of them, going back to when the town was first part of this consortium. Metro West at that time had issued a similar flyer. Just asked for an update of that, and they wrapped their arms around it and did a really good job with the explanations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that would be something else to share with the select board at that time. If they haven't already seen it, then we can make sure that they have an opportunity to do that.
If you're looking for topics to cover in that meeting too, I think maybe an update on LRAP too, and just the number of families that are being helped.
I would agree.
Speaking of LRAP, do we have to get on the CPC agenda to ask for LRAP funds for 2025?
So I think the way that we left it last was that we requested a certain amount of funds, and we essentially, as I understand it, Bartlett, is we need to spend down those funds and not come back for more. unless we actually need it. In other words, if we haven't spent down the funding and we go back and ask for more, they are likely to say no because those funds haven't been spent down.
Right, but I think my guess is at our rate of LRAP, we're not going to have enough funds in our LRAP budget for FY 26 without asking for more. I don't know that we need a whole allotment. I think we got
Yeah.
$75,000 last year, which was what we were asking for, on the 500 per working out the
Right.
math. And we'll have spent down probably at least 2/3 of that, so we probably have to go and ask to replenish that 2/3. And we probably need to do that in January or February, right? To submit the application and work through the process, so
Right.
I don't know who does that.
Yeah, that was my understanding also, that we could ask to replenish up to that limit that we got the first time, which I thought was 90,000, but so we can ask for that difference, what we spent to
We
replenish.
could ask for the difference.
Yeah.
So, are you on CPC still?
I am.
Oh, you are, sorry. Let's work together on that application. Do the CPC for those funds.
Yeah, because I think EHS needs to provide us a report of what's been spent in order to find out. I didn't think we had enough. So it'll be good to see what that report says then.
And the run rate, right?
Mhm. Thanks, Mark. All right, so February town meeting, or excuse me, February town newsletter. We talked about February being the month when we really want to promote the mini grants. So that's what we'll do then. Minutes from November 19th. Folks have a chance to read those minutes?
I read them. The meeting in paragraph 3B, isn't that the meeting that Henry Fontaine was at with with some of us? And another 2 minutes.
Okay.
In another 2 minutes, you'll be out. Okay, so that's all.
Okay, so Bartlett, I'm on the meeting minutes 3B. And it's talking about the one-stop grant award implementation. Is that correct?
Well, I don't have the minutes in front of me.
Okay, so, and what's your point about that paragraph?
Well, there was a meeting where we talked about the grants for repairs, and we were all sitting around the table, and I thought that was the meeting that was I mean, it listed Liz was there, and some of us. And I thought that Henry Fontaine was there.
I don't remember him being there.
No, you don't? Okay, then I'm thinking about the wrong meeting then.
Okay. All right, any other comments? No? Okay,
Okay, make a motion to accept the minutes.
Mark,
Second,
did you? Did you have another comment
Nope.
before we? Okay, so we have a motion to approve the minutes, Bartlett and Sue. All in favor, Mary Ann,
Yes,
Mark,
Yes,
Bartlett,
Yes,
Sue?
yes,
And Anne is a yes. Okay, so we're accepting those minutes. Thank you. Let's see, so guest speaker, so technically our guest speaker for tonight was Linda. So she provided a little bit of information. And I think the bottom line to it is sometimes folks aren't willing or able to attend evening Zoom meetings. So that's something that we want to keep working on. But for our upcoming January meeting, let's talk a little bit about the date. So it's my understanding that we can't do the 14th because there's another
Well,
meeting going on.
right, usually we would meet the 21st,
Mhm.
but that's well,
It's-
the joint select board finance committee budget and department budget.
Mhm.
And then that's followed by on the 28th by some other joint select board finance. So we were looking earlier.
Yes. And we were looking at sometime the week of the 14th,
Yeah, the 13th would be the Monday, 14th Tuesday.
right? So basically, all of our Tuesdays are kind of shot for January.
Well, the 14th works, right? If we want to do that. It's the 21st and 28th, there's select board meetings.
Correct.
Something on the 14th?
I thought I remembered that you said you had something the 14th.
I do have something on the 14th, yes. So that's why we were looking at other dates. So I could do the 15th.
That's 2 days after, or a day after we're meeting to finalize the small grant applications. That doesn't give us much time, but I think we're gonna be pretty close anyway.
Well, we could move to the following week of the 22nd. If you think that would be better.
That works for me.
The 22nd's fine for me.
Bartlett, Sue, Wednesday, the 22nd?
Okay.
I think I can do that. Yep.
Okay, great.
Oh, wait a minute. I
Yeah.
have, no, um, I have PMBC, I think. But I'm not sure about that yet.
Go back and do the 15th, but that doesn't provide a lot of time after.
Well, if you do the 15th, he's gonna have CPC, so
Bartlett, which is better for you, the 15th or the 22nd?
Well, I probably will have CPC on the 15th. Yeah, that is the third Wednesday.
I could do the 16th if we wanted to make it that day.
I can skip the PMBC meeting. They usually have a quorum.
Well, Bartlett, Mark just mentioned the 16th, 1/6.
That does not work for me.
January 16th.
It doesn't work for Marianne, so,
So we'll go for the 22nd and make Bartlett skip out of his other meeting, or you can attend both at the same time.
one's on
I've done
Zoom.
that.
Yeah. January, 22nd. Yeah, okay, well,
Let's do the
I can do,
22nd.
I'll make that work.
Okay. All right, thank you. So Wednesday, January 22nd, 6:30 PM for our next meeting.
Okay.
And it will be via Zoom. Is that right?
Sounds good.
Terrific. So between now and then, we've got some follow-up to do with folks so that we can actually continue to make progress in some of these projects. Thanks everyone for meeting right before the holidays crunch.
Yeah. This is great.
Thank you very much again for the lovely treats. They smell really good. I'm sorry, but if you're around tomorrow, second floor,
They'll be in the break room.
they'll be in the break room.
We're leaving them.
All right,
So stop on by, Sue.
okay.
All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Great, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right, everyone, have a great rest of your
Thank you.
evening. Happy
Bye.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Thanks.